بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام نبي كريم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين والصحب الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's my pleasure to be here with you. It's my great pleasure to be here in Karachi. It's my first time here in Karachi. It's not my first time in Pakistan, but I was in the north, and so now I've come down south where the action is at, as they say. So I want to give my thanks to my gracious hosts, the Islamic Research Academy, for inviting me to address you on this important topic. And inshallah, I hope you will find it beneficial. Some of the responses I probably imagine it would be when people hear that I'm a revert or a convert. They never thought it before. It's because I'm from South Europe. So South Europeans look a little bit, they could look like Arabs, they could look like Afghans, Pathans, and even Punjabis. My friend Hamza Zortis, you must, maybe for those of you who know my friend Hamza Zortis, many people didn't think he was anything but he was Pakistani. They thought maybe he was from Pakistan, even though he's Greek, 100% Greek. My friend Steph Keris, Greek convert to Islam, people think he's Arab. So we're not as appreciated or valued as in terms of quality of converts. No, that's not a real convert. We want blue eyes, blonde hair, European. In one of my events, I met someone who was from an Indian Hindu background, and they converted to Islam. And when people encountered them, they converted to Islam. When Muslims encountered them, they say, "Oh, you're just Pakistani now." All right. Even though the challenges and the trouble they had to go through and the torment from their family is much harder than a white English person becoming Muslim. They should be more appreciated, I think, than a white English person. But people have this colonial mindset of value. It can only be really a real high-value convert. It has to be the Aryan features, blonde hair, blue eyes, and so. Anyway, okay, Bismillah. So the first question I get is, why do we need to learn about these kufr ideas? Why do we need to learn about kufr? Right? Why not we just learn about haqq? Why can't we learn about haqq? Well, the reason why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks that you need to learn about kufr. Why? Because there's so many verses in the Quran that teaches you, that's telling you about the kufr ideas. Here's what the Christians have said. Here's what the Arab pagans have said. Here's what the ancient Egyptians said, used to believe in. It teaches you about the kufr ideas that many human civilizations have held. Why? So you don't make the same mistake. That's the point. That's why we study people's mistakes. So you don't learn it. The wisest way to encounter mistakes is from other people's example. Don't wait for you to do the mistake. So inshallah, this is one reason. But another reason is because the Muslim world doesn't treat the West like it would a different civilization like China. Pakistan has good relations with China. You do collaborative projects on fighter jets with China. But does any of you know what the Chinese believe? Does any of you know what the average Chinese person, what their deen is, their aqidah, or anything like this? No. You take their technology and you're happy to work with them, but you don't care about their aqidah. It doesn't bother you. But it's the same for the West. We buy Western products, but we don't just restrict it to technology. No. Western civilization has influence. It sells its cultural products to us. And unfortunately, we buy those cultural products en masse. So that we know exactly what the Western culture is, because we see it on the movies, we see it on TV. We have a ruling elite that send their children to Western universities deliberately. So right? Or that even have second houses in the West, right? Where they spend their time there and they come back. See, that's where their heart is, right? But they rule here. So Western ideology is the dominant ideology in the world, and it is dominating over the Muslim world, including Pakistan. That's why you'll get many Pakistanis who are liberals, socialists even, and many others. And we're going to go through not just, firstly, what these different schools of thought believe in, but why they split up into different firaq, different factions, and where it all comes from. What happened? Where did this all come from? So I'll start off by saying there was the West. We call it the West. People often say the Christian countries, but they're not the only Christian countries. Russia is a Christian country. Ethiopia is a Christian country. But we don't say the Christian countries, or at least we don't say the Christian countries anymore. And the reason why is the West is defined by all the countries that used to be, at least 1,000 years ago, Catholic countries, Catholic Christian countries. The language of the educated class was Latin across all these countries. And many of the actual language spoken by the people derives from Latin, French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish. But they looked at themselves as different to the Eastern Christians and Ethiopian Christians, and in one point even takfir, they did takfir of the other Christians themselves. So they said, oh, we are the Christian peoples, no one else. They're not real Christians. And that defined them as a civilization. They used to call themselves Christendom, the dominion of Christianity. That was their name for themselves before they were called the West. Funnily enough, do you know who called them the West? It was the Russians. And it kind of stuck as a name, right? The Russians called them, in Russian, Zapad, the West. And it kind of became popular during the late 19th century onwards. Anyway, so they got called now the West now. Okay, so what happened in history? Why did suddenly, they went from a situation where they weren't a very important civilization, they weren't very well developed, they were considered barbaric, very chaotic, no inventions, no discoveries, no improvements, no change, to suddenly one where we think the modern world, meaning the current world, is defined by them. How did we get here? Well, up until the 12th century in the Christian era calendar, the 1200s, 1100s, the Christians had this belief, this worldview, which is that Satan, or Iblis, or Shaitan, whatever word you want to translate that as, he is the ruler of this world. He rules this world, right? It's in their Bible, by the way. I didn't just make it up, right? This is what they say. Meaning, not like God doesn't rule the world, but rather God lets Satan have some rulership, control the world. This is his, he has the control. So the world is evil, the world is bad, the world has lots of problems. So the only thing that you can do is, as a Christian, is embrace Christianity, become Christian, be baptized, make sure your aqidah is perfect, meaning follow the Catholic Church's details of the aqidah, and don't leave the church, and then you die and you be saved. As long as you die on the truth or on Christianity, you're saved. That's the only thing that Christians should think about. You can't improve the world because the world is ruled by Satan. So instead, just save yourself and save souls of other people, give da'wah, Christian da'wah, but that's it. That's all you can do. And then something changed, right? Oh, I forgot to mention, they also said that you can't change the world. The world will not be improved, will not be saved until you must wait for the Mahdi to come, Jesus to come, and he will sort everything out. No point doing anything before the Mahdi, Isa alayhi salam comes, because he will sort everything out. Sounds very, I get the two things confused there. So, because I've heard it before from somewhere. Anyway, so don't do anything now. Wait for Isa, alayhi salam, Jesus to come. Right? He'll save the world because it's in the Bible. It says he's going to come. He's going to defeat the devil, and everyone will be saved. And he'll also kill all the disbelievers. But anyway, that's in the Bible, by the way. Okay, but something happened. Something the Christians didn't expect. They thought they were the saved people, the people on the haqq. And then they encountered a civilization that shocked them. That civilization was more advanced technologically than them, more advanced in learning. Their technology allowed them to make better cures, better medical treatments, medical instruments. It allowed them to have very advanced hospitals with free public healthcare. And also, the adab and akhlaq of these people was far superior to the Christians. You couldn't trust anyone in the average Christian land. You leave money behind, you get stolen, goodbye. Whereas there was a Christian monk, and I say this because this is from their writings, who was traveling in Egypt, and he said he's amazed by the Saracens, as he calls them, the Saracens, Muslims, how that you could leave a bag of gold on the road and come back 1 week later and it would still be there. No one would take it. Right? He was shocked. He said that would never happen. In essence, he was saying that would never happen in the Christian lands, right? The politeness, the hospitality, but also the trustworthiness of the Muslims was far more than the people who are meant to be on the haqq. How could this be? What's going on? So they interacted with Muslim civilization in Sicily, which is south of Italy, by the way. It used to be under Muslim rule for 300 years, I think. Spain and Portugal, or Al-Andalusi, which is where I'm from, under Muslim rule for 700 years. And of course, when the Christians launched the Crusades to take Palestine, that was their interaction with Muslims there as well. From these three major points of interaction, they discovered and took loads of books written in Arabic. Many of these books were translations of ancient Greek texts, Greek philosophy. But a lot of this was brand new knowledge, actual knowledge, scientific research, astronomy, mathematics, and so on. They started to take this, books on engineering, how to build new things. So, oh look, the Muslims had this really advanced way of grinding wheat into flour, which is usually, it takes a long time, it's very laborious. You have to get maybe a donkey, attach it to 2 millstones and make it go around to rotate it and grind it. It's very laborious. They make these things that let the wind do. They make the wind do it, called windmills. So this is really advanced. Like, we don't need to, have a donkey to do that. The wind will do it for you. So they learned something shocking. And that shocking thing is not Islam is the truth. We wish it was that was the answer they found from this. No, the answer they found from us was change and improvement is possible in this world. That's what they learned from us. And you know what? Their approach to our civilization, I wish we had that approach. They didn't care about our Aqidah books. They didn't want that translated. They don't care about Islamic books. They don't care about books on Islamic theology. They don't care. They didn't want that. They don't want that translated. What they wanted was books on engineering, mathematics, science. They took some philosophy books too. They translated some philosophy books, but that was it. They translated Greek philosophy because the Christian ancestors used to read Greek philosophy. And so they thought, okay, we respect that. We now have more books now. By the way, Christian philosophy was affected by Greek philosophy. That's why they believe in some weird ideas like the Trinity, God becomes a man, and other such things, which I won't go into. Okay. So this starts the period of European history called the Renaissance, rebirth, the rebirth of their civilization. And they begin to change, improve. They start studying things. They learn this new method from Ibn Haytham right, who wrote his book on Al-Manazir, Kitab al-Manazir, a book of optics, about testing knowledge by experimenting, right? Oh, okay, let's try this, right? Slowly but surely they begin to make new weapons, new technologies. They discovered an experimental weapon the Muslims were using in Al-Andalus, which was putting some kind of explosive substance in a metal tube and firing a projectile from it. It was an experimental device that's been recorded in the battles when they were conquering Al-Andalus, that the Muslims were testing it out, and they started to take that and then use that to make the first firearms. Possibly, Allahu Alam. So they started to change. But as they were translating Greek books, they translated Greek books on something called skepticism, which means to doubt knowledge, doubt people's claims of knowledge. Just to have doubts. If it's not certain, it's not yaqeen, you should doubt it. Eventually, they started to doubt the Catholic Church. That led to the firq of Christianity being developed called Protestants. But if they doubted the Catholic Church in its aqidah, eventually there would be doubts on the Bible itself, although that wasn't a major thing yet. But they started to doubt other things. And one of the points was that they had all these different Christian sects now. All these different Christian sects splitting off, and when the Protestants would take control of a country, and it would be one sect of Protestants, let's say Calvinists. And maybe if they found another Protestant sect called Lutherans, they'd say, oh, you are Ahl al-Bid'ah. We're going to torture you until you change your aqidah back to ours. To save you, to help you, right? Torture you, persecute you. And this is what happened in the West. There was wars of ikhtilaf, right? But not on political things, usually. It was actually on aqidah arguments, right? So, because they thought to themselves, the purpose of a Christian government is to straighten the people on the correct aqidah as well, not just their amal, their actions, right? So they start, but the problem is with Protestants, almost every person can be their own firq, their own firq, right? Their own faction. Because if you just have one verse of the Bible, you have a different interpretation, then you become your own firq. So every Christian can be an individual firq, was the potential problem. So they said, we need to have a new way of life, a new law system, a new politics that stops the fighting on this issue. And where are we going to look for this? And then there was a few, I'm not going to go into full detail, but then there was a thinker called Hugo Grotius, is a German thinker, who tried to look at making an international law between countries, because different countries have different laws. So how do we relate to each other with a law system or some kind of understanding, like I don't steal from you and I don't invade you and this kind of thing. But where do you look for this law system? Because it's from the Bible. Well, it is ikhtilaf from the Bible. Is it from a different religion? Well, then you don't follow. Not everyone follows that religion. So where are you going to find this new law system? And Hugo Grotius was very interesting. He implied something. He said that when the Christian countries, when they fight each other, I'll rewind that. You could say, when the infidel, non-Christian countries fight each other, they have limits. They have some limitations, things they don't do. They're more civilized. But when the Christians fight each other, which we're meant to be following the truth, we have no limits. Massacres, killing, there's no limitations. It's bloody. No, civilians they're killed, children killed, women raped and killed. right? There's no limitations between the Christians. We need to find a way to civilize ourselves, right? So he came up with something which was going to change European thinking. Maybe not one guy, but you could say what he said represents the change of thinking, which was, he said, we need to find a law, a natural law, your law of the universe for human beings, for insan, that would still be true even if God didn't exist. Right? So it wasn't God making the law. And that created a change. They wanted to find a law that was from somewhere that was not revelation. Because they said there's ikhtilaf, there's too much ikhtilaf on revelation, on wahi, on the Bible. So let's find it somewhere else. Something else you have to understand also is the Bible, the Christian part of the Bible. Christians never expected to be rulers or having rulership. There's ikhtilaf amongst them, but the major opinion amongst Christians is they don't follow the laws of Moses, the laws from the Jews anymore. So Christians, if you ask a Christian, what is halal and haram for you? They might say zina is haram. Okay, we agree. And adultery is haram. Okay, we agree. Lying is haram. Okay, we agree. Maybe being violent to somebody without a just cause is haram. Okay, we agree. Anything else? That's about it. It's very vague. It leaves a lot of areas not explained, or there's no guidance in a whole bunch of things. I mean, many Muslims we've encountered when we give dawah, and when I was much younger and I was giving dawah in Speaker's Corner in London, which is like a place in London where every Sunday people go and speak. There's a Christian couple coming, and I said, we're having a discussion, and I was like, okay, you and your wife have come here and to have this discussion with us is good. And they said, oh, no, that's not my wife, that's my girlfriend. It's holding hand, like, what? And you're religious Christians? Oh, yes, we're very religious. We're going to get married soon. He was kissing his girlfriend and hugging her. And so I was like, for us, it's like really strange. Like, but you're not married yet, though. Oh, no, it's not haram for us. What's haram is zina. Right? It's like, but this, okay, it gets very difficult for you. Maybe what about if you're alone and you have, we have some lustful thoughts. It's true. It's hard, but I don't know if they're telling me everything or they didn't succumb to their lustful thoughts, but Christianity is very vague about, is there a law for politics, a law for state, a law for government, a law for economics? There's nothing. So something happened in Christianity, amongst the Christians, that led to the age of the European history called the Enlightenment. Okay, Renaissance is not the same as the Enlightenment. Renaissance was them rebirthing, changing, and improving. The Enlightenment was them discovering, you could say, or inventing a new aqidah for their worldview. And this aqidah is, now this is a quote by John Locke. John Locke is an English thinker, and he quoted this phrase. I don't think he originated ultimately this idea, because you see many thinkers saying the same thing, but they were all sort of reading each other as well, so they were in the same network. But he came to this idea, which is, we want to find a natural law for human beings. So if you want to find natural law for human beings, by the way, you don't need to write down anything. I'll make the slides available to the Academy, and they'll probably, if you contact them, they'll give you a link and you can download it. So please, I want you just to listen, and you'll get all the slides. I always make my slides publicly available. So they said, we need to find a natural law for human beings that you can see, because we've been using this new type of knowledge called science. The word science means knowledge in Latin. This new way of knowledge. So maybe we can apply this knowledge to answering the question, or we apply this method to answering the question, what is the law, what is the ahkam for humans? Maybe the universe can tell us. Right? That was their idea. So they did scientific experiments on humans. They tested, they've analyzed the brain and psychology. And then no, they didn't do that. They came up with a speculation. They imagined something. And they said, what would humans be like before there was a society and a city and whatever? What were humans like just by themselves? Now, in science, what you do is you take an object, you take it separate from everything, and you test it to see what it's like. And then you come up with, you see how it reacts, and then you write this down and you come up with knowledge, experiment, okay? So they imagine, in a way, we look at the human being as an individual and see what he's like or she's like. And then we can derive law from this. But this wasn't an actual experiment. This was what we call a thought experiment. They just thought about it. So they said, maybe before society, people were just individuals running around in the wild just by themselves. Everyone just by themselves, alone. And maybe Jacques Rousseau said, men and women would be separate, and everyone would be separate running around, and men and women would only meet up to have relations with each other, and then woman would get pregnant, and man would go, but there was just individuals. So then they said, well, what is natural for these individuals? Well, they are free in nature. They are free in nature. They do what they want in nature. And what else can we say? They said, well, so they said, okay, humans are free, they do what they want, and you control your body, so you own your body. You own it. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anybody else. So John Locke says, man in a state of nature is the absolute lord of their own person, your own property. You're equal to the greatest, and you are not a slave of anybody. Everyone is a king, equal to everybody else. You're equal because you're all individuals who own yourselves. That's in essence what they said. That's the two main, you could say, bid'ah ideas they come up with. Humans are meant to live free, do what they want, and they own themselves. But then how to explain government, how to explain society and laws and this? And he says, well, because in a state of nature, a bigger human could maybe attack a smaller human, they feared this, so humans got together in groups and they gave up. So the core aqidah, the core aqidah, you could say the tawheed of the West is there is something that is one and absolute, and that is the human individual. The individual, right? Absolute freedom, and they own their own body. I don't know if you've heard the slogans from the West, but you might have heard people, maybe in the Awrat marches, I think in Pakistan. I thought at first the Awra march is like, what, it's about your Awra or exposing the Awra? I'm not sure, but they said it means women in Urdu. Okay. So the Awrat marches, they might say, my body, my choice, or my body belongs to me. This is the Western Aqidah. As Muslims, we say, well, your body belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You just have it on loan, you could say. Right? And and the Western philosophers used to say, well, because you control your body, you own it. Well, if I break into somebody's car and I can control it now, do I own it now? Oh, I didn't steal it. I can control it, so it's mine. It's mine now. It was a silly argument. But also, it's also factually wrong. Humans have never been individuals before society. They've always been in small communities. Maybe anthropologists have said maybe 30 to 20 people, groups of people. When we go to the Amazon rainforest in Brazil or in Papua New Guinea, you find tribes of people in the wild. Again, 20 to 30, 40 people. They've always been in tribes, humans have always been together. Or the family is not individuals, they are more than one person. Humans have never been alone. Okay? The worst torture, one of the worst tortures you can give somebody is in prison, solitary confinement. They're by themselves. Right? And it doesn't matter if you put them on a prison or you put them on a desert island, a small island or an island, they're by themselves. They're going to be, oh, I'm happy now, I'm free. No, there's no one around, no one to talk to, you go crazy. Humans are not meant to be alone. We're not. We're individuals, yes, but that's like saying the cells of your body are individuals because you can take one out and look, it's a cell. Yes, but it's going to die soon without the rest of the body supplying it and so on. Anyway, so if you want to know the aqidah of every Western madhab, every Western school of thought, it is this aqidah. It is always the same. They just have ikhtilaf on how to achieve this. Because they say humans are meant to be free and they're meant to be only restricted when it's necessary. When necessary. Now the question is, what is your definition of necessary? Right? And you control your possessions, your property. What? But what if you control all the property of a land and no one else has any property? Would that be fair? Right? How can you live if you have no food? Right? Freedom doesn't give you anything if you're starving to death. Because of these problems, these issues, there was ikhtilaf amongst the Westerners. And the ikhtilaf produced firaq. It's funny, they said, we want to get away from firaq, so we're going to invent a new ideology. But that created even more firaq. And firaq, which led to more bloodier wars than ever was in their history. The Cold War, which had many hot wars around it, was between two madahib of Western ideology. Right? The two different madhabs. Right? So, this is the core aqidah. Now, a lot of my presentation is a bit technical because the madhabs have very subtle differences. So, don't worry, you don't have to read everything on the screen. I've put a lot of text on the screen so that when you go home and you download it, you can read it properly. But just allow me to explain it, okay? Because it gets very, as I said, even in an audience where English is their first language, when I've given this presentation, to understand some of the madahib is very complicated. So please bear with me. There we go. So these are some of the main thinkers of the Enlightenment, ideals. You can divide the Western madhabs of philosophy into two schools of thought. On the left there's Anglo-Saxon liberalism, and on the right there's continental liberalism, which is so basically English philosophy and those who come from England, they have a slightly different philosophy tradition, and those from France, Germany, and so on, they have a slightly different, a different philosophical tradition, which we will discuss. Now, what is the beliefs of liberalism? Humans are the owners of themselves. Individual humans are the owners of themselves. So, you own your body, it is your property. So they would say, for example, the idea that after marriage, the man has a right to the woman's, obviously, her body, and the woman has a right to the man's body, is something which is, it is heresy for them. Right? For them, this is kufr. Right? They say this is oppression. I say, why? Oh, because no one has a right to your body. Only you, with your consent. They say, but the nikah contract is the consent. It's like, no, but it has to be every second there must be consent. And well, we're not saying to force yourself on your spouse, but the spouse has to acknowledge, whether it's the wife or the husband, they have to acknowledge that, yes, the other person has a right over the body, right? That it would be morally wrong for me to deny that, unless there was a good reason, like I'm sick or Well, yeah, mostly they're sick or what have you, or sleeping. Yeah. So apart from those situations, there's no problems. They don't have a right to say no to their spouse. Right? They shouldn't. They shouldn't say no. But this calls them to define halal and haram, their halal and haram, on purely respecting other people's self-ownership of their body and their property. So something is good if it's done with the consent of someone, and it's bad if you do it without their consent. If you touch them or hold them or any of this stuff without their consent, or you take their property or not. Now, we can understand that, yes, thieving is haram for us as well as Muslims, but they invented a different basis, a different usul to determine these things. So some of these things are going to agree with us anyway, but we came first, right? But that doesn't mean that Islam is liberal. Some liberal Muslims make this mistake in their heads, right? Like, no, Islam's not liberal in that sense. But this had implications. And the implication of this is that they started to allow things which their Christian ancestors didn't allow. So gay marriage. They never allowed this before, but now, well, it's consent. So allow it to happen. But funnily enough, they retain laws in the past they haven't yet changed or they didn't think about. Like, okay, so let's say two members of the same family, brother or sister, want to get married and have intimacy. Is it okay? They consent, and there are cases that people that they want. There are people that want to do that, but the law, oh no, that we won't allow this. Then they say, oh no, because it could cause genetic problems with the next child, with the children. Say, what if they have protection? Or I'll give you a better one. What if it's two brothers? Yeah, they consent. Is it wrong in the law? And they'll find it hard to explain. No, it is wrong, but it's wrong. Okay, but why? It's just wrong. But what? But your Aqidah says it's okay. Yeah. And they said people drink alcohol. They should be allowed to drink alcohol. Why? It's they make the choice to drink alcohol. It's consent. Say, okay, then let them take crack cocaine. Let them take heroin, methamphetamine. Why not? Oh, no, but this causes social problems. This causes people to be slaves to the drugs and all this. But they did it with consent. Oh, no, but we have to stop them because it's not good for their own interest, not good for themselves. But does anyone know which intoxicant in the West kills the most people? Alcohol. Drink driving, violence, domestic violence, and so on. With people drunk are more prone to violence. The police in England, I know, are busiest on Friday nights and Saturday nights because of all the drunk people on the streets. But they can't. They're not consistent with applying their laws. And even then, they say things like, okay, well, consent is someone that has the capacity to consent. So they must be not drunk. So if you have intimacy with someone who is drunk, this is rape. So this is rape. I say, okay. But then I know there was a case in America over two university students. There was a girl who was drunk, and when she was drunk, she became very aggressive, and she wanted to sleep with this boy in a dormitory. And the boy's like, no, and she was really, really aggressive. She kept going to his door and whatever. Eventually, right, they had intimacy. And the next day when she sobered up, when she was not intoxicated anymore, she said she realized that she had intimacy with someone. And so she said, oh, this guy raped me. Even though she was the one coming to his room for a couple hours, banging on the door and trying to go. Her friends had to pull her away, but she kept going and kept going and kept going. So she was the aggressive one, but she accused him of rape because she said she couldn't consent. And the only thing that saved the man from being jailed was that he too was drunk. So what, they raped each other? But here's the problem. If someone is too drunk, when they're drunk, they can't consent for intimacy, then how can you be prosecuted for what you do when you're drunk? Because in England, being drunk doesn't mean you're not prosecuted. You commit violence when you're drunk, you go to jail. If you attack someone, which happens a lot, you go to jail. The police don't care, right? Being drunk is not an excuse, but I don't understand. If someone's drunk and you have intimacy, they're raped, but if they commit a crime, then they can be prosecuted because they have mental capacity. What? It's a contradiction in the West. So, and that's just a few things, but I want to keep this as short as possible. So liberalism has many contradictions in itself. They don't apply things consistently. Sometimes they realize there's a harm to a freedom that they allow. And when they talk about, they say, oh, we're free in our country. And yet, in Western democracies, usually, like in England, on average, there's a new law produced every day. Every day, a new law. And laws are designed to do what? What are laws designed to do? Restrict what you can do. So every day they're discovering new problems, and every day they are putting new plasters on the holes of their system. Right? So this leads them to basically these number of problems. Now, liberalism is false. And I really discussed this because humans are not like individuals. Well, you could say humans are not individuals. If we were cells in the body, even though cells are individual, they have a border around themselves. They need other cells around them, right? The body works together. We all are interrelated in that way. So humans have never been individuals in terms of living their lives. Yes, you can say, I can take this one person and separate him out and say, that's an individual guy. But humans on a social level are not individuals. There is one cell in the body, there is one kind of cell that occurs in the body that wants to do its own thing. It doesn't want to follow the genetic code anymore. It wants to be free to do what it wants to do. Can anyone tell me what we call such cells? Cancer. And it eventually kills the body it lives in and then kills itself because it can't exist without the body. And this reminds me, subhanAllah, as I said, the refutations for these deens are discussed, you can see in the Quran and Sunnah. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave a beautiful hadith. He said, people are like those, or societies like those people on a ship. Some are put on the top deck, some are put on the bottom deck. So if those on the bottom deck, they need water, they have to ask those on the top to give us water from the side. But if those on the bottom deck say, let's not trouble those on top by asking them for water, let's drill a hole through our part of the ship to get water directly. If the ones on the top let them do that, they would all be sunk, all die. But if they were stopped from doing that, they would all be saved. So Islam simply understands that humans can't do whatever they want. But then again, no one actually, not even the Western countries believe that. With all the laws they have, not even they believe that. Because they have, when applying it, they are realistic, right? Oh no, we can't be fully liberal because there's all these problems that come about. So stop this, ban. You have free speech, but then that's banned, and you can't be, racist speech is banned in France, Germany, England, But in America, America is following an older form of liberalism where they hadn't yet banned being racist. So to say a racist word in England is illegal, for example. But then they started to say, but if you were to say something that is homophobic, which is like anti-gay, that's also illegal now in England and in France and in so on. Whereas in America, it's not against the law because they follow an older form of liberalism. Europe follows liberalism 2.0. America is more like 1.5 or something like this, right? Anyway, and of course, you go into the military and tell tell the soldiers that, oh, no, just do what you want on the battlefield. I'm sure it'll work out. Well, no, the whole point is to win, you have to be organized, and soldiers have to know their limits and what they can and can't do. So we know this. What are the consequences of liberalism? Liberalism. Well, there is consequences to religion. So liberalism is not just what you might call a political philosophy. Liberalism is a deen. You can't separate it from its comprehensive worldview. It has a full worldview. Because, have you ever wondered, I'm not sure if this is how you read it though, but have you ever wondered why you will see the term secular liberalism? Not just liberalism, but secular liberalism. I don't think you've seen it in those, the two words occur together usually, right? You think, I don't understand though, but liberalism is already secular, so why does it need, you have to put the word secular liberalism? Oh no, secular liberalism refers to liberalism being applied as on the politics, right? But there's another application of liberalism, of the aqidah of liberalism, which is on theology or religion. It's called religious liberalism. So secular liberalism is political. Religious liberalism talks about religious aqidah. So a liberal Muslim, you might have encountered them, or a liberal Christian, and most Christians are liberal, by the way, they will start to challenge Allah's right to judge us. But what they'll say is, okay, God punishes. Yes, he's right to punish. But he only punishes what is haram in liberalism. So rape, murder, theft, yes, he punishes that. But somebody doing zina, drinking alcohol, oh, this is consensual. As long as it's consensual, then he doesn't punish that. Following a different deen than the haqq, oh, it's okay. As long as they'll say, as long as they are a good person. You heard this before? It doesn't matter, as long as you are a good person. The problem is, the word good person means different things to different people. As Muslims, we say a good person is someone who is mukhlis, sincere to the truth. As maybe they are in the Amazon rainforest, a tribesman living out, didn't meet civilization, never heard about Islam, but he's mukhlis, he's hanif, right? Rightly inclined. He doesn't worship idols. He believes in the God that you can't see, that is above everything in creation. He doesn't have any Sharia because he doesn't have access to the Islamic Sharia, but he follows what the fitrah he has, and what good laws exist in a society that maybe came from a prophet tens of thousands of years ago, because every society has had a prophet come to them, or every area for the prophet. So for us, a person who's sincere to whatever truth they can find and does good is a good person. But for them, a good person is someone that respects other people's bodies, sovereignty over their body, control of their body, and their possessions. That's a good person. So different aqidah, they say, why you punish other people from different beliefs? That's not just from God, because their aqidah would not view that as just. They would say, punishment in hell forever? That's not fair. Because sin is limited, because a crime like death, killing someone, or rape has a limited effect and limited duration. So why unlimited punishment in hell? No. It will be in hell for a limited time, maybe. Right? So these are the kind of things which liberalism is the problem. It is a deen. You might meet, and I'm not sure what the liberal Muslims are like here, but Muslims who've adopted liberalism, you might have encountered their perspective of heaven and hell to be not the same as yours, right? Because liberalism is a deen, a full, complete deen. I mean, it doesn't deal with human nature properly, of course, but it has an answer for everything, is what I mean. It's not a good answer, but it tries to give an answer for everything. So a liberal Muslim is really just a liberal, but with Muslim flavoring, you know? You know, you like have noodles and you could put a little flavor packet on top of them, you know? So what they are is a noodle. They're not the flavor, all right? But they just have a little slight flavoring to them. Okay. Liberalism tends to cause two problems in the West: narcissism and hedonistic behavior. Narcissism, or not being a narcissist, is to love yourself and think you're the most important person in history amongst society. Why? Because you own yourself. As far as you're concerned, you're the only one that you live through, you experience through. So for you, the most important person is you, because you're an individual, right? You're a king of yourself, right? Does a king care about another kingdom? Or they care about their own kingdom only, or mostly? Their priority is their own kingdom, not other people's kingdoms. They wouldn't sacrifice their kingdom for other people's kingdoms. So narcissism. So people say Donald Trump, for example, oh, he's such a narcissist. Look at him, only cares about himself. And so many leaders around the world have been trying to say good words to him because they think it works, right, to him. Oh, you're so amazing and great. Hey, we'll buy you a whole plane just for you as a gift. You know, and in a way, it kind of works a little on Donald Trump, right? He's a narcissist. Because for them, oh, you're doing something because you think I'm special? Well, I am special. So your value to me is only as much as you recognize how special I am. So I like it. Yeah? And hedonistic behavior is satisfying your desires, your physical desires, any which way you can, because the creed of liberalism was happiness is defined by continuing gratification of the senses, meaning continuing satisfaction of pleasures. That's the definition of happiness. The idea that someone can be physically suffering every day, but actually be happy, is alien to them, right? They don't understand this. They say, no, but you're suffering every day, so why would you be happy? I don't get it. Even though they realize in some way that, well, you know, someone that goes to the gym and is very healthy will be happy, even though they can't eat what they want and they have to go gym and you know, then you have leg day and then upper body day and muscle, all this kind of stuff. It's quite grueling to do it consistently, but you can feel a sense of happiness or a type of well-being from this. So they don't understand it, even though there are many people, like there are lifestyle coaches and others in the West, that there are people that do realize that we need something more than just gratifying our senses every day, making lots of money, but they don't know where they can get it from. And the reason why they're not happy is because humans are designed for purpose. We need to follow a purpose. You judge yourself based on how well you're following a higher purpose. You could be suffering every day, but if you're being successful in your purpose, you feel good. It's part of the fitrah. One of the things that liberalism also does not understand is it doesn't understand how people can negatively affect each other. So you can have lots of rich people getting lots of property and they can own that property because liberalism allows them to own property. Okay, but they earn so much and they have access to all these resources. The more money you have, the more money you can make. So if you have a few people that earn lots of money and lots of resources, but there are other people in that society who can't earn as much, eventually you have people who have so much they have monopolies over things, and they can basically have the large share of things. So what this happens is that you have a lot of poverty in the West, to the point where, and by poverty I mean where people are unable to pay for the necessities of life. So food, energy, heating. There are things called food banks in England. Food banks are places where people donate food. They just, here's the food, and for anyone that wants it, right? There's not that many, but there are. And those food banks are, they can't keep up with demand. So what the West invented over 100 years ago, and I didn't mention this, but technically liberalism failed 100 years ago, 125 years ago, or 130 years ago. Liberalism actually failed 30 or 30 years ago. In England, you think wealth inequality is bad now. In Victorian England, or in America, you had 1% of the population owning 80% to 90% of the wealth. In Victorian England, you have Charles Dickens. You know Charles Dickens, maybe you've heard of him. He's an English writer from Victorian times. So I suppose the subcontinent would have heard of him by the the English colonists would have probably brought the knowledge of Charles Dickens. So Charles Dickens wrote about how bad the conditions were in London, the capital of the British Empire. There were women who were poor on the streets and taking opium so much that their children died in their hands because they were so out of their minds with opium and starving. They didn't have time, or didn't think to beg for food to feed the child in their hands. It was really bad. And he wrote about this. The poverty was at really bad levels. So they did something which technically liberalism says is not your responsibility, which is you're an individual, your property belongs to you. But they need to create a welfare system because there's too many poor people, and they were worried that these poor people would become socialists and cause a revolution in England and America and what have you. So to avoid that, they made welfare system, payment for poor people, free healthcare, workers' rights, and things like this. Because before if you're a worker and your arm got cut off in a factory in an accident, the manager doesn't have to care about you, the boss doesn't care about you, and if you can't work anymore, you get fired, too bad, right? So they had to implement these new reforms because the poor people were looking like they're gonna rise up, right? So they had to bring it up, but the problem is the welfare system is still not enough to pay for the poor people, and the money they get is very small. The healthcare system is overloaded in England. And let me put it this way. I actually asked around because I need some treatment on my teeth. And I actually asked if there are any good dentists in Islamabad before I came here, right? Because I was going to pass by Islamabad. Because I heard Islamabad is the place to go, maybe for dentists. Maybe Karachi is good as well. But so I was looking because it was cheaper here. So, and many people from England, I can only speak for England, but also I think America, they call it health tourism now. They find places in the world where healthcare is really cheap on private, right? But it's far more cheaper than private healthcare in England. Private healthcare in England, for let's just say, if for just one tooth, maybe root canal treatment or whatever, just for one tooth and a replacement, so on, you're looking at something along the lines of 365,000 rupees for one tooth. All right, you understand? That's at a cheap place, right? You know, so there's not enough actually to pay for this. The new mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, said he's a Muslim, right? People will start to say, people saying to him, against him, the other candidates, he's Muslim. we had 9/11 in this country. We had the airplanes that destroyed the buildings by Muslims. How can we elect this Muslim? Don't vote for him. He's a Muslim. He hates Israel. Why does that matter for the mayor of New York? Your city's in America, not Israel. But anyway, there's all this stuff against him. He's a Muslim. He's a Muslim. He's going to bring Sharia to New York and so on and so forth. All this stuff, right? And I mean, heck, in Pakistan there are some laws from Islam here, and the Christians in Pakistan, they're not prohibited from drinking alcohol, because for them, or their Sharia, they don't think it's haram, right? In Pakistan, only Muslims are prohibited. So I often tell the people who hate Islam, we don't even apply Sharia in non-Muslims in Muslim lands. Why are we going to go to England and apply it over there? Anyway, so Zohar Mamdani, but all this attack against him, but he didn't just focus on saying, "Oh, this matter if I'm Muslim." Well, I suppose he did say that, but he said, "I'm going to ignore this. I'm here to help the poor people of New York, because New York is not an affordable place to live in anymore for the average person." That's what got him elected, because it's not affordable for the average person. Because liberalism doesn't, even when it had a welfare system, it was a big plaster. The welfare system is like a plaster, right? It's a bit more, it's like someone's got blown in the stomach with a big cannon, right? They're dying on the ground, if not already dead. And you say, okay, let me put a plaster. But no, it's a big wound. You're not going to help much. Or I'll put a bandage around it. It's a hole through the stomach. The bandage ain't going to help much, right? So that's liberalism. It can't deal with the problems of the liberal economic system, which you know it through a different name called capitalism. That was the socialist name for it. In the West, there is high rates of rape, sexual harassment, and molestation. Men, women on the trains, women. Everyone will tell you at least one story whether she's been touched on the train. In the underground, we have like a subway, or underground, we call it in London, right? And so on. I usually have statistics, but I'm not going to save you going through loads of charts and things. I have other lectures where I give all the statistics and things like this. But basically, it's usually the amount of people who get raped or have been raped in their life in England is about 1 in 4 women. So out of every 4 women, 1 woman would have been raped, basically. So I mean, I'm not sure what the stats are across the border, but India too has renowned problems with that. When they say, "Oh, these Muslims are so conservative. Oh, we can have women wearing clothes amongst us, revealing stuff. We'll behave." No, you're not behaving very well. Actually, I wouldn't want to risk sending any of my family members over there. Neither any of yours. You would risk the same. Also, the problems of sexual frustration and arousal is a big issue in the West. Most people report sexual frustration. In the land where zina is halal, in their deen, they're still sexually frustrated. Right? And the problem is, they say, also, 1 in 2 marriages break down. The biggest cause of marriages breaking down is either finances, dispute in finances, or adultery, or cheating, or so on. It's now almost normal for there to be some level of cheating in a marriage in the West. Why? Because a man gets married, you think that's the end of it. He's married, got a woman there, and a woman's got him. But every time they go out into society, they're reminded of the lost opportunities or the other possibilities there are. And I guarantee you, there's always going to be someone, whether you're male or female, there's going to be someone out there of the opposite sex who has something that maybe your husband or wife doesn't have in some way, or not the same degree. Guaranteed, that's nature, it's how it is. Okay? You say, "Oh, why can't I have this?" That would gratify my desires even more with this one aspect, right? Because if your purpose in life is to gratify your senses, then why are you stopping yourself? It's not illegal anymore. Why are you stopping yourself? Right? What you want to do? Okay, there's that. And let me go to... the rest I'll leave you to read, but liberalism has not solved the problems it claims it would solve. So it wants to create a world order where everyone treats each other according to in a civil way, where they said they banned slavery. They banned slavery mainly after the Jamaican slave revolt, that they lost a lot of resources, a lot of money in the Jamaican slave revolt. The British Empire did, and they discovered that slaves were not as well incentivized, they were not motivated as much as giving them a profit incentive. So they realized that slaves are not efficient workers because they're only motivated by the whip, whereas if you give them a little pay, they'd be more motivated. So they banned slavery, ultimately because it leads to slave uprisings, which are very costly. You always have to, there's high maintenance of slaves to make sure they're working, they're doing all the time. It's very high maintenance. And because they don't produce as much as they could do with monetary motivation. Because slaves cost money anyway. You have to give them food and clothes, not the same clothes you should wear, like Islam's rules say. No, just some basic clothes. But still, it costs money. You have to have a place for them, food, upkeep, water, right, for them. So they realized that they should ban it. But they replaced it with a different kind of slavery, wage slaves, which is people who they're only one paycheck away from starving or for not having food and losing their house. And so that's a problem in the West. But they've sought to alleviate it by outsourcing it in other countries. So if they can make other people make products for them at low prices, slave labor in hot workshops, for example, like many people go to shop in Primark, right? Primark is a shopping chain that sells clothes in England, right? It's deemed to be cheap, right? For those who don't want to, spend exorbitantly. I have no shame admitting I shop there. Why not? But I noticed on the back of all the shirts it says "Made in Bangladesh," right? And from what knowledge I know of the conditions of workers in Bangladesh, it's not very nice. It would almost seem like slave labor. I mean, sure, they can leave their job if they don't want it, but where are they going to get money from? How are they going to live? Yeah? I mean, a slave can stop working too. He'll just get whipped, or the slave owners didn't always whip them. They would just say, okay, no food for you until you work. No food, no water until you work. So the slaves didn't always just whip, slave owners didn't always whip them. They had different ways. But how is it different? Colonialism, liberalism's responsible for colonialism. Colonialism is the jihad of liberalism, right? Now, liberalism does not intend to move populations of people over the world and take over those areas with their own people. You don't need to do that. What they wanted was to change your deen, was the main point. So they came over, they realized it cost too much money to have soldiers occupying a land, taking the economy from it, what have you. They found it was cheaper to get the natives, to have natives that have the same mindset as them, selling them the resources at very cheap. So that's Adam Smith, the famous economist, was the first person to criticize, the first public thinker, you could say, to criticize having military occupation in another country. Why? Because it's bad, because it's a bad thing to do? No, because it costs lots of money to do it. It's too much money. It's sometimes more money than you get out of it. What's the point? Instead, get the native people, take some native people, young ones mainly, educate them, say, we'll make you the government in this country. And then when Lord Macaulay was famous for this, Google Lord Macaulay minute on education. It's about India, or the Raj of India. He says it all there. He says he'll create native people through a West education system established in the Raj in India. Will create people who are new administrators of the land, which are of brown skin, but white on the inside, right? I mean, ideology doesn't care about skin color, but this was the term they used, right? So that's liberalism. Islam, when we expanded the lands of Islam, we didn't change the deen of anyone we found at all. We just changed the new security apparatus around them, the security regime. We say, you know what? This is establishing the peace of Islam here. Your peace is guaranteed by the deen of Islam. You don't have to worry about some Roman imperialists or Persian imperialists or whoever who can mistreat you or do bad things if they change their minds. No. The deen of Islam itself will protect you, your religion, your property, your personal rights. Right? This is in a narration from the Prophet Muhammad to the people of Najran, the Christians of Najran. So we don't change their deen. We don't change they even have their own law courts. The West, you don't have separate law courts for different religions. Never. We allowed it. Yeah. We didn't want to apply the Sharia on them. But instead, we just want to open it up, say, okay, look, we'll do dawah with you individually or we discuss. But if you don't want to change your religion, we're not going to do anything bad to you at all. You're going to live a comfortable life anyway. If you'd like to change your religion, alhamdulillah, you join us and then you become under the Sharia. If not, you live a comfortable life and benefit from the peace we bring and the prosperity we bring. Right? And the lands of Islam was the only time in any kind of, like you might say, if you compare it to an imperialist project, any time where you might see the capital moves to a land that was colonized. Right? So London is the capital of British Empire. It always was the capital. It stayed the capital of British Empire. But when the Khilafah, the Islamic system expanded, it didn't stay only in Medina. It moved to the lands that were conquered. Now the capital is in Damascus. Now it's in Baghdad. Then it's in Istanbul, Constantinople. These are lands that were not the lands where Islam came from. And they would become the center of Islamic civilization. Imagine, that's like equivalent of London, of British Empire moving its capital to Delhi. Right? Doesn't sound like an imperial project. It sounds like a place where anywhere you go in those lands, you're treated the same. It's exactly the same prosperity everywhere. There's no point in extracting resources from one area to another because everywhere is where the resources have to go to, right? So we didn't have this. Liberalism justifies terrorism. People don't realize this, but they do it on a state level. So liberalism justifies, like in World War II, they bombed German cities, civilian cities. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, or Hiroshima as we call it, sorry. I'm saying it the American way, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I've heard too many Americans say it. They bombed nuclear weapons on civilians. Justified. They say their philosophers justify it. And I've pointed out to them and say, like, wait. Islam, we're actually prohibited from targeting women and children, non-combatants, under any circumstances. You can't target them specifically, right? Like, if they're accidentally hit, then of course that happens. But you're not meant to target women and children. You can't do that. They allow it under certain circumstances. They say if your civilization is under threat, if you are under existential threat, not meaning like everyone's going to be killed, but your sovereignty, your political sovereignty is at threat of being controlled or being dominated and taken over, you can use any means necessary if it will win. And then I often say to them, wait a second, you guys say that the Palestinians are committing terrorism, right? But according to your own deen, you allow Palestinian groups, to use any means necessary to fight. Right? The Winston Churchill said that if the Germans invaded England, they would use any kind of means necessary, including, if needed, killing German civilians. They had no problem with that. Right? But in the West, terrorism is defined as using tactics or strategies for a deen other than liberalism. So they don't care the method, really, of fighting. It's not the method they have a problem with. It's what you're doing it for. So if you're doing it for not liberalism, then it's bad. If you're doing it for liberalism, oh, it's okay, it's good. And Israel, when they give their justifications for their bombing and killing of Palestinians, they use the same liberal explanations. Self-defense. We have to defend ourselves from the Palestinians, and because we think the Palestinians are a threat to our existence, we can use a whole bunch of methods, including killing loads of civilians, which is we feel bad, but it's necessary, they say. So, liberalism is not tolerant, by the way. That's the other problem. Liberalism is not a tolerant ideology. To see an example of this, in England, liberalism is only tolerant to liberals. What liberalism generally does is, if there's a different religion or practice that's not liberal in their society, they have some hikmah. They say, okay, we're not going to ban it straight away. We're going to wait. Soon they will see that everyone around them doesn't follow this, and they're going to stop what they're doing. They're going to change their practices, and so no problem. If that doesn't happen, they start to make life more and more difficult for that minority, and then eventually they ban it. I'll give you one example. So the country in the West that has the highest amount of Muslims, Western country, not European country, because that would be Bosnia or Albania, which are Muslim countries. They're European Muslim countries. No, the highest country in the West is non-Muslim, which has the highest Muslim population, is France, about 10%. So 1 out of every 10 French people are Muslim. Because Muslims became a big number, and because they're still following Islam, they didn't say we're going to stop following Islam, although many changed their culture, but as it happens, but because they didn't all become liberals, France began to implement more restrictive laws that go against liberalism, and you'll hear their justification. They said girls going to school or university should not wear the hijab. And then they banned it. You can't go to a French school as a girl with a hijab or niqab. Why? How did they justify this? They said they said an official reason was, the official reason was a school is neutral. It should be religiously neutral. We don't want people to bring religious symbols into the school. But the hijab is not a religious symbol, right? It's not a symbol of your religion. It's just a head covering. My Portuguese grandmother had a head covering. It was like standard for women in my country, Portugal, in her generation. It's not religious. If it is religious, then my trousers is religious. It's a religious covering. Because I wear the trousers, I wear it out of fashion or whatever, but I wear trousers because it covers my aura. So it's religious symbol as well. Should everyone come naked to school because clothes reflect modesty, which is from religion? Right? No, they said it like this, but I read the debates they had. The lawmakers were having debates, and they weren't targeting all religions. They were targeting just Islam. And they explained it like this. Because Muslim society or community in the France thinks that hijab is fard, the women are oppressed because they are culturally forced or socially forced to wear the hijab. And I say, but women in the West are really socially forced to put the makeup on, to spend an hour in the morning doing the hair, the makeup, everything, an hour. Right? Would their life be easier if they didn't have to think about that? Yes. But why did they have to spend an hour before they go to work every day? Makeup, hair, everything, all these by spending a lot of money on very expensive body products, right? Like women's hair products, skin products, all this stuff. Why did they suddenly all they spend a lot of money on it? Like more, a lot of their salary on it. Why? Who made them think they had to do it? Force it. Should we ban makeup and hairstyle and doing the whole thing and all this stuff? Because that is socially forcing women to look a certain way. Like the magazines and the TV and now the YouTube and the TikTok, how women are told they should look, how perfect they should look. Oh no, we don't ban that. That's free choice. That's free choice. Oh, the hijab? No, we don't like that. And there's a reason. There is an ultimate reason behind this, which is if Muslims wore the hijab and jilbab because it was a fashion choice, they wouldn't mind it. They wouldn't mind it. Why they mind it is because we believe it is fard, because we believe there's someone or something above us which owns us, not ourselves, and because we are his property, that's why we wear this. We cover our awrah and so on and so forth. Oh, but that means that you do not believe that you own your own body or you control your own thing. Oh, that's oppression. You're being forced. Right? That's why atheists have become or non-religious people have become quite a big thing. In England, America, it's more complicated. Why? Because, as the Russian atheist philosopher said, we should remove the idea of God from human beings, because if we believe there is a master in heaven, we will be slaves on earth. You can't be free. That's what they said. Okay. Then they banned the niqab. Then they banned Muslims being able to pray in public. In France, you can't pray in public, in the park. You're not bothering anybody. You're in the park, you're just doing your salah. No. This is, they say, ostentatious demonstration of prayer. They say, you praying like this is imposing on other people. I'm not touching anybody. I'm not physically hurting anybody. How is it imposing? Oh, it's like socially imposing on them. I say, why? I don't see two white atheist French people walking down the street and seeing Muslim praying, going, oh, I have to pray now, I can't stop myself, I'm being forced. No, but they say this. Now England doesn't have the same level of restriction, although it kind of does in a way. England has the most terrorist laws than any other country, anti-terrorism laws than any other country. They banned people committing acts of violence for political reasons. Civilians committing violence for political reasons, because soldiers, that's what soldiers do. They commit violence for political reasons. So they made a law saying no civilian is allowed to commit violence for political reasons, or encourage it. Okay, is that enough? No. Now, if we ban a group under the terrorism laws, you're not allowed to support them. Okay, I won't be a member of them. Okay, but you can't say that they're good or nice, or you can't say anything positive about them. Okay. And then they made another law just 2 years ago. You can't say anything that might be interpreted as even supportive of a group. And you might think, oh, but this is for terror groups, like groups that commit violence. No. There was, well, it depends on your definition. There was a group called Palestine Action in England. They spray painted a British military plane because they were protesting against Britain's involvement with Israel and support to Israel, including what they alleged was military support. So the British government said this is a destruction of property or damage to property. That's violence. For political reason, you are a terrorist organization. That's what happened. So, because we think terrorism means you kill people, right? You kill civilians. But the Palestine Action, as far as I'm aware, hasn't killed any people. But they're considered to be a terrorist organization. There was another organization in England Now, this one was a Muslim organization, Hizb ut-Tahrir. For many decades, the British government has been trying to ban them, but they couldn't find a law they could use to ban them because Hizb ut-Tahrir are not violent. They don't use violence or advocate use of violence. But one member of Hizb ut-Tahrir in Egypt, I think, from what I could read on the news article, they praised an Egyptian soldier that couldn't see the Gazan conflict and the killing of the civilians, couldn't restrain himself after he saw that. And he shot or attacked an Israeli border guard or border security, may have killed one or two. And they praised it. And then the British government said, well, this HT member praised this guy. So they're praising violence. Violence done, even though it was a soldier, not a civilian, but they mean you do it without official orders from the government, from your government. This is terrorism, therefore HT around the whole world is declared to be a terrorist organization. Right? So what you see in the West is they have many restrictions on what you can say, and that's just the terrorism angle. They have other angles, hate speech. There was a British lawyer, a Palestinian, it was a sister, a Palestinian, a British doctor, right? So she's a medical doctor. So she criticized Israel, criticized Zionism. They tried to get her banned from her job, right? Then the British government used a law called Offensive Communications Act, which means that they said that she said something that caused serious offense on a Twitter. So that's against the law, and they arrested her, and she filmed herself being arrested. Wait, yeah, grossly offensive communications, that's it. Sorry, grossly offensive communications? That's very vague. What's offensive? Because I can think of all kinds of things that are offensive to me as a Muslim. Can I ban people from speaking, saying those things? But in the West, Muslims, when we hear about freedom of speech, when Islam is attacked, they say freedom of speech. The Prophet Muhammad is attacked with cartoons. They draw bad cartoons of him, evil. Freedom of speech. But when we then say, okay, well, we want to criticize Israel or we want to criticize Zionism and so on, we say, oh, this could be grossly offensive. This could be racist against Jews. I mean Zionism, not Jews. Or this could be anti-Semitic. Or this. So Muslims always hear about freedom of speech until it's our turn to speak. Then suddenly no freedom of speech anymore, right? And funnily enough, 100 years ago, the West was doing this to the Jews. The Jews in the West were considered to be problems. There was large numbers of them. And they weren't assimilating. There was complaints about them. There was worries about them. Some people say that Britain granted Palestine as a place for Jews to go because they wanted Jews to leave. Right? And other anti-Semitic reasons. They thought Jews would cause too much trouble. Oh yes, and I forgot. Arthur Balfour of the Balfour Declaration. You know Arthur Balfour? The Balfour Declaration, the one that officially allowed Jews to go to Palestine in order to create a Jewish homeland. I mean, Muslims let Jews go to Palestine. That's not a problem. But to say this is a homeland for Jews and the native people, we don't care about them. So basically, Arthur Balfour said in a communication, a letter, it was actually a diary of a meeting between him and an American government representative. They were having a conversation over dinner, and the guy wrote in his diary, I spoke to Arthur Balfour and I asked him about different things. And he talked about Palestine, and he said that Palestine would be a good place to put the Jews, and that might settle many of the Jews down because many Jews were socialists or communists, basically. And if you don't, they noticed that, yes, not all communists are Jews, but a disproportionate amount of communist thinkers and leaders were Jewish, disproportionately. So they said maybe it was led by Jews, or Jews are like the leading this. And Karl Marx says it was Jewish, by the way. So Arthur Balfour said it seemed to him that Jews would destroy Western civilization from within if we didn't give them what they want. Right? So this hatred against minorities, or a problem with a minority if it becomes too big, and if it doesn't change its culture, it doesn't change its deen, is part of liberalism, right? I saw a TV show once, a debate with someone, and someone said, "Oh, Muslims have their practices and their religion, and these things they do is not modern, and what they're doing, they're not following British culture." And then someone said, and the lady said back to them, "But what about the Jews in England? They have very similar traditions and laws like us. Are they a problem?" No, because there's not many of them. And then that is, so is it the problem with Jews would be that then they're not a large number, but if there were a large number, it's okay? Then they didn't know what to say. Right? They didn't know what to say back. So it shows you, in the West, they worry about other deens amongst them if they become large in number and they don't change themselves. They don't adopt the deen of liberalism. So they're always intolerant. And they're also intolerant to even the people following their old religion there. Catholics. For example, there was a Catholic adoption agency. So couples come to them who can't have children. And they say, okay, we vet you, and then if you're good enough, you can have a child from our orphanage, maybe. You can look after an orphan. But then when the equality laws were made in England, and obviously homosexuality was not legalized until only last century in England, they then said, well, all adoption agencies must not discriminate if the couple is gay, 2 women, 2 men, or heterosexual. You can't discriminate. And the Catholic adoption agency said, well, we don't believe it's right to raise a child with a gay couple. We don't think it's morally valid according to our worldview. But the government said, this is the law. You have to be equal to everybody. So they had to shut down. So we said, we're not going to do this. We're going to shut down because we can't. We can't follow our religion at the same time as follow your law, basically. So this is just a few. This is really a few examples, but I will give you just 1 or 2 more from a different perspective of the different schools of thought, and then I'll wrap up. So just like 5 more minutes, and I think I'll be done. So you can see all this in the slides, by the way. Yeah. So the slides, I've made it fully comprehensive for you, and you can read it. But I just want to focus on some parts of these slides. So the Quran has some amazing refutations of the deen of liberalism before liberalism even existed. Although one of the things about the Quranic verses I've discovered is each verse can have multiple meanings, and each meaning can be true. Right? You might think this applies only to the pagan Arabs. It applies to this. It can apply to many things, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He revealed the Quran, He revealed it in the best words, knowing the future, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above past, present, and future. And so He knows what message we need to know as human beings. So He says, look, have you seen him who has taken as his ilah his own desire? Right? Would you be a wakil over them? Or do you think that most of them hear or understand? They are only like cattle, nay, they are even further astray than the cattle. Why? Because the cows don't have free will. So what's worse than a cow that's astray, that doesn't know any better, someone that knows better, and is still got lost, right? It's worse than the cow then. And the other verse in the Quran says, say, not equal are the things that are bad and the things that are good, even though the abundance of the bad may dazzle you. So just because basically humans don't know what are good for themselves, you can't trust fashion, society, culture, because it could be wrong. It's made by the human, even if it's the majority. And most people, interestingly, all people are influenced by their society. So liberals create a society of individuals. Do what you want, but you become slaves to those people who can tell you what you want, who can make you want something you never wanted before. You become their slave. The fashion, the leaders of fashion, leaders of the ones who make Gucci bags and so on, and all the others names, they somehow told women that bags are the things to have. They represent status. And so every woman is now fascinated about bags in the West. I'm not sure if it's here as well. Or shoes. And they buy many types of shoes when they don't need that many. Right? Why? Because fashion media someone has persuaded them, has told them this. They told them, the more you reveal, the more interesting you are. The more you reveal your body, the more you will get attention and the more people will pay attention to you. Right? And so, that's what they've been told. So if you dress more conservatively, as they say, you're viewed as, it's like somebody driving a Ferrari, covering it up with a blanket or something, you know, you can't see it. You say, what's the point then of having a Ferrari? Right? That's what they say, you're missing out. Right? So this is the thing. There's another school of thought I will wrap up very quickly, is conservatism. When I say liberals, some people say, and Muslims in the West make this mistake a lot. They say, okay, I'm not liberal, I'm a conservative Muslim. And I say, no, don't be a conservative Muslim. That's bad in a different kind of way. So, conservative Muslim is a different madhab of the West, has the same aqidah. They just have a different conclusion, which is, they say that society has spent centuries and centuries and centuries finding things that work. And they become culture and customs and institutions like the marriage system and things like this. They say liberty, human liberty or individualism or what have you, this came out of a society that had a certain culture. Don't change this culture because you want to make more liberalism or more whatever, because maybe the culture is what made the Enlightenment happen. So a conservative Westerner, sometimes they're Christian or otherwise, but they will say that Christianity is important because it set up the morals and the institution of marriage, which creates a stable society. Right? So the usul of the conservative madhab is they're liberals in the sense of individual freedom, individualism, but they say stability is the most important thing. Because if you have revolutions and chaos and killing, then your freedom is not going to matter much, is it? When you're being bombed and killed and massacred because there's a civil war. So they arose when they saw the French Revolution. And the French Revolution was for liberalism. It was a liberalism uprising. And they said, oh, we don't want that. We don't want French Revolution and beheading people, cutting people's heads off. They cut off so many heads. They make ISIS look like the ED Charity Foundation, you know, with the hospitals and the thing like this. By comparison, the French, in fact, they were more efficient than ISIS. They invented a machine that would make it more efficient to cut people's heads off. Because if you have to cut with a sword or an axe, it depends the skill of the person. You might not get it right all the time. So they make the guillotine. This is much more efficient. And France was executing people with the guillotine until 1974 as well. So it was rather recent. They've been using it. So the British said, we don't want that. We don't want French Revolution. We want reforms is okay, but not revolution or massacres or killing. And that was because the French were saying, we want to have a change, a radical, complete change of society. Whereas the British were saying, liberalism, yes, and slight changes, yes, but not so drastic or so quickly or you throw everything out the window to make a clean table to build your new society. Keep some things, right? Now, this is where I've left you some quotes by the father of conservatism, Edmund Burke, and a newer scholar who still lives and is very famous in England, Roger Scruton. I left you those things you can read for yourself to see how they justify what they say. But one of the problems is, okay, well, before I get to that, the problems of conservatism is that conservatism isn't really a different way of life. It's just a braking system, like for brakes on the car, but not to make society stop, just slow it. Yeah. So there's a joke in political philosophy in the West that conservatives are just champions for what liberals were saying 40 years ago. So in the West, conservatives would be saying, "Yeah, we support LGBTQ, gay marriage and equalizing these things. We support this." Conservatives will be saying this. Christians will be saying this. In fact, when they're attacking Muslims or Islam, they say Islam doesn't allow homosexuality, or doesn't allow people to same-sex couples to have intimacy. Right? Homosexuality is a broad term. Right? It can mean just having the desire. Right? But we can't ban desires, because who can control their desires? In terms of what desires you have. You control what you do. Either you say yes to it, or you say no to it. You do something else, right? So Islam just bans intimacy between the same sex, and intimacy outside marriage, or outside a responsible relationship of contractual commitment, because there's also marriage, and also those who are your jariyah, those who are the I know people call it slave and slave girl, but I don't think that's a good translation. But anyway, I'll stick in discussion. So many Muslims have adopted conservatism, thinking it is hikmah, and yeah, this one. Where did I put it? Yes. Conservative Muslims. Remember, I talked about liberal Muslims, conservative Muslims. Conservative Muslims say this. You recognize this, you probably recognize these terms a lot. The highest usul for conservative Muslims, like conservatives, is social and political fitna. Meaning, civil war, yes, that's bad, but also arguments, shoutings, political disruption in society, they define that as fitna. The Sahabas define, and the Quran defines fitna as something else, right? Yeah. Fitna is of being obstructed from following the haqq. This is the fitna the Quran mentions, right? And fight them until fitna is no more, and deen is only for Allah. So from the many tafasir of this, the fitna is that the polytheists and pagans stop the Muslims from practicing Islam, or those who want to embrace Islam. And religion is only for Allah, meaning those who want to become Muslim or not is up to their choice. So because Allah is the decider of who believes and who disbelieves. No one else should be the decider of that. So so fitna is oppression. Fitna isn't arguments. Fitna isn't disagreement. Right? Fitna isn't hardship or difficulty. The Sahabas faced difficulty fighting for Islam, calling to Islam. Do you think the Prophet Muhammad didn't face fitna in Makkah? All the Sahabas, or Bilal? Would you say, "Oh, Bilal, what are you doing? You're making fitna for yourself." Don't call to Allah. Don't call to Islam. It's fitna for you. Right? Now, this is actually the ruling madhab of the Muslim world. Conservatives. Because when the Westerners came here, I'll be done soon. Right? When the Westerners came here, they realized that Muslims the political system wasn't ready for liberalism. Because if you gave Muslims freedom of speech, freedom to elect who they want, to have different political parties, their free speech would be used to call to all of Islam, all of it, not just the importance of Salah or the importance of Zakah. They'd call to all of it, and they set up Islamic parties which would have fully Islamic manifestos, and they would get into power and they would become Islamic State. They would go back to what they were before the Westerners came. They knew that you guys were not ready for full liberalism. So instead, they educated a new generation of Muslims. Many of them left Islam, and it's not me saying this, it's the colonialists said this. Lord Cromer, governor of Egypt, he published a book. You can find it online. It's available on archive. I think it's archive.org. Just Google it, called Modern Egypt, 1919. Google it, but I made an article where I put some snippets up, okay? He says that the Egyptian that becomes educated becomes an Europeanized Egyptian, and he loses his Islam. He becomes agnostic. He said it, right? So, Abdullah, are you takfiring the rulers? Well, I'm not takfiring any particular one, but I'm not takfiring them. The colonialists are takfiring them, right? They saw it because they were enjoying it. They were like this, yes, right? But these agnostics, you know, they thought Islam's a backward religion, but they say, because the people aren't ready to have Islam be removed fully from society or the culture or the customs, even though the culture was not always fully Islamic in many cases. But anyway, so instead they adopted conservatism. They say, for the purpose of having a stable post-colonial society, so after the British soldiers go, having a stable society, we will retain some aspects of Islam that we will officially look like we are respecting, and we will maintain so the people are happy. So in Pakistan, you can't insult the Quran, you can't insult the Prophet Muhammad, you can't insult Allah, but you're perfectly free to completely ignore them at the highest level at all in following them. And something tells me that, because the Rasulullah, there were many times where people said bad words against him. People even violently attacked him. Even in Medina, there was a Jewish man that came up to him that had lent him money and grabbed him and shook him, said, "Pay me what you owe," right? And almost like, should I kill this guy for doing this? And Prophet Muhammad said, "No, right? Like go to the Beit al-Mal, pay this guy what is owed." The Prophet Muhammad forgave people who attacked him, but he devoted his life to the message. Something tells me, Allahu Alam, that he would care more about his message being respected than him as an individual person being respected. But now we have the opposite, right? We never let anyone insult him, but the people at all kinds of level of government, all the way down to the civilian level, can completely ignore him, right? Like he doesn't exist. And only pay attention to him only because there are people who are paying attention to him and they are worried about offending you, or and then you doing the same thing to Salman Taseer, doing to them as doing to Salman Taseer. They don't want that. That's the only limitation. But what they're doing is, you have this red line, and it's quite low, because if the Muslim world, if the line was up here that the Sharia should be implemented, and only Allah's Kalam is the basis, the Furqan of the state, and is the national interest, Allah's pleasure is national interest. If our red line was up there, it would be an Islamic system. They couldn't dare not have that. But because our line is really low, okay, you can ignore the Sharia, you can ignore Allah and His Messenger, His message, just don't insult them, right? And what they're doing is they're waiting for it to get lower and lower, and because you've already compromised, so why not more eventually, right? You'll get countries like UAE now, which are like a second Israel in terms of they're massacring the Muslims of Sudan. Their popular influencers are even celebrating the massacring of Muslims. They said they would wish to see Sudan completely destroyed, even though the reason why they care about Sudan, why UAE is involved in Sudan, is because of gold. You know, UAE has the biggest gold markets, one of the biggest gold trade in the whole region, but it has no gold mines. Where does it come from? Anyway, so you'll see religious Muslims who are conservative, and they come in a different form. They're the kind of guys that will say to you, obey the ruler. But the ruler is not implementing Sharia. The hadith said, obey the leader as long as he implements, as long as he aqamat kitab Allah minkum, establishes the book of Allah amongst you. As long, it's a conditional, right? Oh, this is Khawarij talking what you're saying. No, it's what the Prophet Muhammad is Khawarij. So they take one hadith which says obey the leader if he whips your back or takes your money. With the tafsir say about this, it means he takes zakah from you, or he punishes you for you committing crimes. Then he punished me, I hate him now. There's no excuse. You still have to obey him, right? So they will say obey the leader. Then they say not even criticize him, not even say anything bad about him, right? In the Arab countries, this is very heavily pushed. I don't think it's very strong in Pakistan, but I'm sure you've probably heard someone say this somewhere in Pakistan too, right? There was a whole faction that was developed called the Madkhalis from a Saudi scholar, which it was a bid'ah idea because the Sahabas criticized the rulers all the time, in their time, to their face and public, not in private, in public. There are many ahadith. I have an article where I talk about all the athar about this. Anyway, and of course you'll hear conservatives say. Also, at the same time, you'll hear them say things like, oh, well, following this aspect of Islam is against the culture, or it's extremism because our culture is like this. You know? Yes, we can display the woman with all kinds of things in the wedding. This is our culture, even if it's like the older is not fully covered. But this is our culture, it's okay. Right? It's like, the culture doesn't change the deen of Islam. What deen are you following? Culture or Islam? And by the way, the word for deen in Arabic means everything. Culture, religion, way of life, ideology, all those concepts are in the word deen. So if you're following religion and culture mixed somehow, you're actually following two deens or one deen with even the pagan Arabs believed in Ibrahim alayhi salam and Allah. Right? They're Muslim? No. They believe in Allah, that means they're Muslim. They believe in Ibrahim, right? Their prophet. No, they mixed it with, and they're following a different deen now. So anyway, the Islamic response to conservatism, and when it is said to them, follow what Allah has revealed, they say, rather, we will follow what we found our fathers doing, even though their fathers understood nothing, nor were they guided. So culture has no authority. All right, I will then go down to feminism. I'll be very careful. I'll be very quick on this one. Feminism is very simple, really simple to understand. It just means women as well. So why do I say this? Because when liberalism was brought in, everyone was eventually given the right to vote, meaning men were given the right to vote, because men were head of their family. So men were given the right to vote. Before, they had no right to vote. Then they did, and then it was only the rich people, or people who have a certain amount of money, not the poor people. Eventually, the poor people too. Only in the beginning of the 20th century, by the way, in England, poor people couldn't vote until the 20th century. Yeah, so India was already colonized before poor people could vote in England, or women could vote in England, right? So the West wasn't superior because they gave women the right to vote, or poor people the right to vote, because they were already conquering the world before they gave all these rights. And homosexuality was banned. Right? In fact, homosexuality wasn't banned until Britain left India, I think. I've double-checked that. But until they left India and Pakistan and so on, then it was banned afterwards. So LGBTQ is not going to make your civilization advanced. Right? There's no connection. Anyway, so but because they didn't give women these rights, and because women didn't have, when women got married, their property became the property of the husband. This is from Christian tradition, right? We don't have this. Women started to complain. They said, wait, if liberalism is for all human beings, we're human, so women as well. And that's the first feminism movement. That's all it is. It's not more complicated than that. Feminism is liberalism for women as well. That's what it means. But then there was second wave and third wave and fourth wave feminism, which I'm not going to go too much into. But social liberalism updated itself to liberalism 2.0 because liberalism 1 failed really badly in the 19th century. So liberalism 2.0 was social welfare, was you can't say things that hurt people's feelings if it's about something that they're doing which is halal in liberalism. So, for example, if you criticize someone for same-sex intimacy and it's offensive to them, they say, well, same-sex intimacy is halal for us and you're criticizing this person. And because you're criticizing this person, it affects their freedom to do that. So we're going to ban you from speaking that. You can't say that, right? So they invented all these things. So this is called social liberalism. If you want the full, the technical label, is called social liberalism. In America, it's called the new liberalism. And it changed. Funnily enough, it led to so many restrictions came in because old liberalism didn't work and it caused too much chaos. So then when social liberalism came, it was, okay, everyone has the right to be equal under the law, but now they have to be the right to equal opportunities. And then women said, and us as well, so we should be allowed to work in the workplace and be given the same salary as men for doing the same work, right? Because before women weren't given the same salary. And then we need to change the culture to make it okay for women to work. And then it became to make it normal that women should work. So if women doesn't work, there's something wrong with her. Oh, a woman says, I want to be a mother, look after my kids, make sure that I give them my full attention because a stranger won't love them more than I will. Oh, something wrong with you. This is gharib. Strange. Do you have the same word in Urdu? Gharib? Oh, I thought you said something similar. Sorry? Oh, ajib, no? Something similar like that? Okay. Yeah, like it's strange. Sometimes I experiment with saying an Arabic word because sometimes in Urdu you've got the same word. So anyway, okay. So there's that. But then the socialists and Marxists say that everyone should have the same amount of money or the same property or ownership. And then there's Marxist feminists who say women, that should apply to women. Women also, like men, should have the same property and so on. So feminism is simply whatever madhab of the West you're following, it applies to women too. The same. But yeah, it's only madhab of the West. That's feminism in a nutshell. And lastly, I will go down to this. I've got a nice little diagram for you guys. Here we go. I've summarized a lot of what I've said, but basically, the common school of Aqidah is the Enlightenment. It has two main pillars: political individualism, where they focus more on the individual, and the other side is political equality. Now, every person from the West who follows the Enlightenment ideas believes in equality and the ownership of the individual. You own yourself. You are the king of yourself, the malik of yourself. Everyone believes this. Common aqidah, shared by everybody. The ikhtilaf, but if you think that the way to make sure that everyone is individual, is equal, and the way to make sure that everyone is free is that you make sure that every individual has laws that protect their freedom from other individuals, from other people and society and or the state, then no one should force on them or push on them or pressure them to do anything they don't want, as long as they're not harming anybody else and as long as they're not stealing from anybody's property, then you're going to be a liberal. The yellow one, the yellow box. But if you think that I believe in freedom and individualism, but I think that why focus on the plant when you should focus on the soil? Okay, the plant comes from the soil. So the society, we have certain customs and traditions and culture that has created a stable society. If you have a society that's not stable, then the plant dies. In this analogy, if the soil is bad, the plant dies. The people will physically fight each other. This is not good. We have to have a real political stability So we should keep some things that hold society together. So we need to have morals. Morals from where? Because no one can agree on what is good and bad in a materialistic way. Like, show me in a microscope where there's good, bad, or in the telescope where good, bad is. Right? There's nothing in the physical universe that says good and bad. So they said, religion is good. We can keep religion. Religion has, you believe in religion. It's great. No, not the political side. No. Just the moral. Just be good and just. Yes. Now, cut the rest of religion off. Take the word good and the word justice, and then put the liberalism definition of good and the liberalism definition of justice. Right? So that's what we want. So a conservative, if you believe in freedom and equality, but you care about stability, and you think that each society develops customs which help its stability. So don't get rid of everything, except things which are maybe contradicting in liberalism very badly. Like, for example, they'll say, I was trying to give an example of what they would argue. I mean, okay, so they would say in Ethiopia, Sudan, the mutilation of women's private parts in those places, which is a custom that goes back to the pharaohs. It's got nothing to do with Islam. They say, okay, this we will ban because this goes against the ownership of the body. We can't allow that. Or when the British came here and they found the Hindus committing sati, right, which is, I'm not pronouncing it properly, forgive me, where they would kill the widow of the woman by putting her on the bonfire of her husband. So the British said, okay, we can't allow this. And the fact that the Hindus were still doing it is because Muslims didn't ban it, because we don't interfere in people's deens. Even if we hate it or find it disgusting, right? That's why they were still able to do it, right? So the British came and said, okay, we're going to kill people, we're going to execute anyone that has commit sati. And then some Hindus said back, but this is our culture. There's a famous discussion, I have to remember where it was from. This is our culture. And the British governor said, and it's in our culture that we execute murderers. So you build your bonfires for the women, and we build the gallows right next to it for the execution. Right? Yeah? So conservatives have some, there are some things that they will, they okay, maybe not everything. Conservatives have different, there's ikhtilaf amongst them as well, what to ban, what to keep. But why they're called conservative is because they want to conserve some things in society, some traditions and culture. So they'll say marriage should be prioritized. The government should reward people who are in marriages, who are in husband and wife marriages, who stay together. A liberal would say, why give people who are married special privileges? Why? Well, why not boyfriend, girlfriend? They have children as well now. Why are you treating them differently? Right? So a conservative would say, no, but marriage, there's a reason why marriage was invented. We shouldn't get rid of it. So if you think like this, you're a conservative. If you think that liberalism is too permissive and it's uncontrollable, but you think that anyone can say what they want, and that makes people ashamed of doing what they want to do, and that makes them not as free as they want to be, and you want to help those people and make them free, so you want to shut everybody's mouths, things like this, then you're a social liberal. But if you want to go back to the old form of liberalism, the good old form, but a form that never existed even, which is go back to a form of liberalism where you only pay tax to the state just to pay for the police, the army, and the fire brigade, the fire department, nothing else. The streets, the things, anything, this is done by the private companies or anyone, but the government is just there to protect you, that nothing else. Then you're a libertarian, the one on the right there. On the left-hand side, I haven't covered this, but I'll end it on this. If you think that you can't be free if someone controls the money by which you eat with. You can't be free when you're starving. You can't be a free individual. It doesn't matter if they're not killing you or whipping you or putting you in prison if you can't earn a living. Or you depend on your boss and depend on these massive companies And if they don't, they can tell you what to do. They can make you do overtime, extra work without pay, because if you quit, where else are you going to work? What are you going to do? If you think that controlling the resources controls your freedom and you want to make people free, you're going to be a socialist. And the main definition of socialism is they believe that the state should redistribute resources to everybody either equally or according to the needs. So you may be a doctor, you may be a chaiwala or whatever. I don't know if you have chaiwalas here, but I haven't seen anyone that just sells tea on the streets. But anyway, maybe it's just in India. But a chaiwala or a doctor with an MBBS qualification, right? You should get the same, because the chaiwala is a human like you, and the doctor is a human, and they both need to eat, they need shelter. Why they should be given different money, right? Oh, but the doctors put more effort, they put more work. Maybe they're more clever, and they got into that position because they could, study very well, and they could apply it very well. And we need to reward people like the doctor, because we need them they're more valuable than a chaiwala. We respect the chaiwala, but they're more valuable in what they contribute to the benefit of society, right? One person saves lives, one person gives you some nice tea, but it's, some nice tea that for Indian pilots, you don't, they're not the same thing, right? So but that's a problem of socialism. And there was one madhab of socialism that became very strong. Not all socialists are this. Marxists. A Marxist or a communist is someone who follows Karl Marx's ideas of socialism, his madhab of socialism. It's a madhab within a madhab. It's more complicated, but he's very influential because he had a very systematic way of explaining the world. Atheist. I'm not going to go into it, but I've included some slides discussing what he believes. But he's basically a socialist. Then, of course, but he argues for violent revolution. The poor people rise up and take down the government. If you think that, let's not take down the government, let's participate in the politics and political party, make slight changes towards that. If you think that's the best manhaj, right, then you're a social democrat, most likely, or a democratic socialist, although they're not the same. Neo-Marxist is a little more complicated. That's why it's very complicated. But neo-Marxist, you know it by a different word. If you've heard about this, it's called woke or woke ideology. I don't know if you've heard of this. But long story short, Karl Marx predicted that the most advanced liberal systems or capitalist countries would be the first to become communist states due to revolution, according to his formulas, right? But guess what? England, which was the most advanced capitalist society, didn't know revolution. France, no revolution. Spain, no communist revolution. America, no communist revolution. A backwater state, Russia, revolution. And then eventually China. So people realized, why aren't the poor people supporting us? I mean, we're giving them benefits for their benefit. Why is not the poor people supporting us? What's going on? Well, Karl Marx, he made a mistake, maybe. So he didn't plan for this. So they thought, what's going on? They said, maybe it's something about the culture of Western society that makes the working class think they're free when they're not free, right? So for them, they called it critical theory. They developed something called critical theory, which is that they need to refute the ideology that keeps the working class and people's minds oppressed and makes the oppressors justified in doing their oppression. So they want to attack this idea. If maybe they change the culture, the political system will change. This is different from Karl Marx's idea. Karl Marx said the economic system produces the culture, which is a bit complicated. I'm not going to go into it. But they changed from Karl Marx's ideas a little bit. And so for them, some people call them cultural Marxists. But basically, they go around and say, we have to change the mindset of the people. And that's what their da'wah is about, changing the mindset of the people. But then they discovered there's more than just two types of classes, poor and rich. I mean, Karl Marx also believed in a middle class, whatever. But anyway, he said that there's a fight between two classes. But they said there's more classes. There's also women and men. There's also white and non-white, and then non-white has different levels, right? From brown, then all the way down to black, right? Different levels. There's heterosexuals and homosexuals. There's abled people and disabled people, right? So they're the ones who go around and say, you must change how you speak, you must change the words you use, you must change, because these are the words and this culture. This all creates this oppression, this hierarchy, right? So, and the problem is not whether the one on the bottom are being oppressed physically by any particular way. They say the fact is that there is those who are controlling or on top and those who are controlled. That's the problem, right? That is the problem. That's where the oppression comes from. So I've simplified it very heavily. So they will say, they say that the West is ruled by white supremacy against the non-white peoples, that the West is controlled by a patriarchy, the men are ruling the West, not the women, even though there are many metrics to show that there's more women in universities than men, proportionally speaking. There's, in terms of now higher paying jobs or careers, women are now outperforming men in similar careers, and so on and so forth, because they had so many pro-female, policies to rectify the inequality as they saw it, right? Anyway, it's a long story, long discussion. But so that's where you hear woke from. And the problem with woke is that they don't understand the problem of why society has oppression. And the problem is not, like, for example, they will say heterosexuality is a dominant form of sexuality. That's a problem. That's not a problem. When I say dominant, I mean, it should be considered the normal. It is, we consider it to be normal, but they say that making it normal or thinking it's normal is part of the problem of an oppression. It makes gay people feel ashamed to be gay and whatever in the West, even though they're not. In the West, they're not. But there's an argument for this that they bring, and it's very complicated. Anyway, so what do I say? I'll finish off with this. An Islamic solution, as Muslims, there's only one source of truth, al-haq, the creator of reality itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rival ideologies, liberalism, feminism, post-Marxism, we must challenge them, but you don't have to challenge them simply by saying this is against the Quran and Sunnah. You don't always have to approach it like that as the first approach. I debate non-Muslim philosophers. If I quote Quran to them, you think they're going to care? They don't care. I quote Hadith, they're going to care? They don't care. I actually say there are contradictions in your deen. Every deen that is not from Allah has contradictions in it. As the Quran says, had the Quran not been from Allah, you'd find contradictions in it. This is our test. How to test something is true is if you find contradictions in it or not. So when a liberal comes to you, or a conservative, whatever you, make them justify what they come up with. Say, why is it true? Why should I believe it? How does it make sense? How does it address human problems, really? Also, Islam must be advocated unapologetically, meaning you should not be shy according to Islam. Now, I'm not sure the reality here in Pakistan is, but in the West, when many Muslims were giving da'wah, they called to Allah, great. They called to the Prophet Muhammad, they talk about the Quran as a book from Allah, great. But then the non-Muslim says, but your Quran talks about the Sharia and the Hudud and all these things. And then they say, that was for back then, that's not for now. Or these things were, they become shy and and I say, don't. That's why I started doing debates for the last 13, 14 years. And I did debates, and many of my audiences were non-Muslim majority. I did debates in Oxford University. I have done debates in Cambridge University. And I'm never trying to be shy about Islam. Instead, I say they should be shy of their kufr. But I don't come arrogant, never come arrogant. I'm respectful, but intellectually, I have nothing to be ashamed of. and I say, you justify your deen. Don't come to me attacking me. Justify your deen first before you come to me. I can justify mine. Right? My deen actually makes more sense. There's a hikmah in it. And if you're thinking, but Abdullah, aren't we meant to just quote Quran and Sunnah? Is that not the main way of refuting or explaining? I say, no. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used different ways. I use a common example. A young man comes to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and says, make zina halal for me. You know, he's a young man, he wants to sleep with women. Make it halal for him. What did the Rasulullah ﷺ say? What did he say? Did he say, aib alaik, haram alaik? I mean, like, shame upon you, it's haram for you. Did he say this? Did he quote, but it's in the Quran, it's prohibited, as if the person didn't know. Many Muslims go to all the Muslims and say, you're drinking alcohol, this is haram. It's like, oh, I didn't know, I didn't get the memo. Oh, well, thank you for telling me. This is the first time I've ever heard this. No, they know it's haram, so why they're doing it for another reason. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said to him, would you like me to make it halal for your mother? And the man said, no, I would hate this. So then how can I make it halal for you? So he used hikmah, made him realize the problem with this, the disgustingness of zina. Right? Make him realize this with this hikmah argument. This is the sunnah. Hikmah, the Quran also says, you know, to use hikmah when you call to the haqq as well. You know, call with hikmah, invite, da'wah, invite. Right? Interestingly, when you invite someone for a meal for a restaurant, it's called dawat in Urdu terminology, right? So anyway, so don't be apologetic, but learn how to explain the hikmah of Islam. But also, by the way, learn Islam. If I was to ask any of you what Islamic economic solutions are for society, how would you answer? Now, maybe some of you could answer very well, but it's more than just riba haram. It's more than that. You know, land distribution. If someone doesn't use land after 3 years, it gets redistributed. Right? So if someone has lots of land, doesn't use it, after 3 years, it's taken from that person, you give it to somebody that will use the land. Right? As one example. Or if someone artificially irrigates their land, they get half the tax as someone that does not irrigate their land artificially. Incentive, tax break incentive as they call it, right? This is from ahadith, by the way. You know? No one can own public resources like oil, gas, water. Again, from a hadith, someone wanted to ask for a piece of land from the Rasulullah. He gave it to him. Then someone said, Ya Rasulullah, do you know what's in that land? It's lots of water. Then he said, okay, come back. You can't have that. From hadith. Why don't we know this stuff? How can you make an Islamic state if you don't give people the vision of what you're going to create? Right now, Muslims think Islamic state, oh, but who's going to rule? What they're going to do? They could be a crazy person. Because as we know, there are many people that can twist any verse of Quran or Sunnah. I mean, not credibly, but they can just make an excuse and say, no, I can kill anyone or I can do whatever I want. Right? So for us, when we hear about Islamic State, we're like, oh, who is it going to be? Because it's like rolling the dice. What's going to happen? I don't know. You know, it depends their desires, right? Their hawa. But if we said an Islamic system and state is like this, here's the laws, here's the constitution, here's what it looks like. We establish a system, a nidam, not a person. And then the nidam will select the person. The nidam will still operate even if the person is like not the best. Yeah, like Donald Trump is incompetent. Joe Biden was actually, people think he's had dementia. His brain, because he's old. But America didn't crumble. Why? Because it has these systems. Every American soldier pledges to the flag of the United States of America and the Constitution, not to the president. As Muslims, we have Nidam al-Islam. The Nidam of Islam, system of Islam. Know what it is, and then work for that. So that even the leader who's selected by that process is constrained by that system, then you don't have to worry. And that's the thing in the West, and I'll end on this. The thing in the West is the reason why it's not a chaotic society where everyone is just pushing, shoving, no one can queue properly, everyone's cutting in the queue. And I was in an elevator or lift, and I come to a floor, doors open. Okay, we're in the lift, time to go out. Everyone can see I'm coming out. No, people come in before I can come out. Like, wait, can I come out first, please? And like, I have to push past people to, why? Because no one has trust or confidence in the system. System is not going to look after you. I'm not talking only about Pakistan. I've been to other Muslim countries. It's the same. Actually, as a compliment to Pakistan, it's actually better in Pakistan than many of the Arab countries, actually. Apart from the rich oil ones, which pay for foreigners to design and run everything, right? So, the best defense against these ideologies, the best defense against them is not knowing how to refute them. It's good to know, and I'm here to teach you this, but primarily the best defense is you set up a rival alternative that's the best system, that's better than these. Then you don't even need to argue with them. They will come to you. But if you don't show a better example, then everyone in this society, in every Muslim country, every child that's born will see their parents not implementing Islam fully, and will say maybe it's because Islam is not perfect system. That's what the kids are thinking, isn't it? Because their parents says, it would be ideal if we had an Islamic system, but also it's okay for limited Islam. So then Islam is not good. Then Islam is not the best system. Right? So that's the message you're sending to the youth. So if you want to refute these Western ideologies, establish the ideology that came before these ones and was the deen of Allah for mankind. Okay. Barakallahu feek.